Today's episode, Josh and I are here and excited and ready for our NBA draft preview. We've been hyping this up for the last couple of weeks, and it's finally here. We're going to touch on, maybe briefly, depending on our thoughts, the Team USA struggles and spoiler, the opening Olympic game against France on Sunday morning, Eastern time for us. And at the top, we'll go over an exciting announcement for the Two Pointers podcast coming up. All that, what you've been looking forward to, next. Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Josh.
And we are back to do, like I just said, cover the NBA draft. That is obviously, point numero uno up the top here at the end, just before where there is a sad void for this offseason, Josh, that trivia is missing. There's going to be a USA Olympic struggles segment because we got some trivia things coming in the future. Don't worry, it's back eventually, but not right now. Right now, the offseason is front of mind for every NBA fan. Hopefully, the preview, we'll go over some lottery team needs, our top 5 prospects, some sleepers, and other thoughts as well. Before I open up anything, Josh, first of all, I just want to ask you, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I think I was my Milwaukee Bucks prediction to defeat the Phoenix Suns came out correct. Milwaukee are NBA champions. Everyone honestly seems overjoyed for Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's one of the most beloved, I think, NBA Finals MVPs in a long time coming out of this championship. It was also great to see some of, at least I saw the highlights of that parade in Milwaukee and the celebration for them winning that title. I think it was great for that town, great for a small market team to win.
It almost feels like the love that we thought Chris Paul was going to get if the Suns had won, and it's awesome to see that either way it was reciprocated. Congrats to the Bucks wholeheartedly. That was a fun series, and I'm glad that series turned out the way it did because it was just so much good basketball, honestly, up and down the floor. I don't think Game 7 we could have emotionally took it, but it was a great series, and let's let these guys, other than the Olympic guys we'll talk about later, get some rest and look forward to the next season. Before we open up into the draft coverage, this is going to be a long and fun episode for everyone involved. The Two Pointers podcast does have an exciting announcement as a new fun place for you to find us. If you haven't found us, if right now, somehow, some way, basically 24 hours from the time we're recording this, we're recording our normal Monday evening. If you're listening to this on the at Sportanarium Network, Radio Network, the live broadcasting network service that is going to be a place where the Two Pointers podcast is going to be live streamed. We're excited for the partnership working with them and around them moving forward. It's just going to be another awesome place that you guys can find us, and they'll obviously be posting social media. So for us, and we'll be posting stuff for them to make sure the show is out there and people know where it's coming from. So we appreciate everybody who's listened so far. We're over 1,000 downloads now, and we absolutely are just grateful for that. But overall, looking forward to working with the Sportanarium Network. Shout out to those guys for touching base with us and giving us such an awesome opportunity. We look forward to the stuff in the future from them. Any thoughts on that, Josh, before this draft preview just gets hot and rolling?
Yeah, really excited to have a new partner and have a new base to extend kind of our reach and to share our terrible basketball opinions with more people. I'm just kidding. But either way, this should be fun. And we're excited for this new partnership.
You're the same guy that said terrible opinions, but you got the series correct. And for the finals, you got the game series amount of the games. And no, wait, you said 7, didn't you?
Yeah.
I thought you said 6. Okay. Well, nonetheless, you picked the Bucks right either way. So again, shout out to everyone if you're listening on the Sportanarium Network. Go ahead, Josh. Let's open this up. Storylines for the draft right now, just for a little kind of thing for the listeners. As of Monday night, this episode is going to go up Tuesday, like mid to late afternoon, like it normally does. That's my plan, even though it's going to be longer than normal. However, there is a high likely chance, I will put it in the description just to be safe, that some trade other than the one we're about to go through has probably happened or could happen or developed and things like that. So as of right now, only one trade has happened pre-draft. I think it's going to be very heavy draft night trading, and depending on how things fall. But just wanted to be clear to the listeners with that little, first minute disclaimer here that some of these opinions may be dated in less than 24 hours. So Josh, open us up with the first official trade of draft week.
Yes. So first trade of the offseason, not counting the Kemba Walker to Oklahoma City and Al Horford to Boston swap, as kind of we passed over since that took place in the postseason still at that point. But the news broke, and it had to do with a lottery pick as well. The New Orleans Pelicans and the Memphis Grizzlies have struck a deal. Jonas Valanciunas, the biggest name in the trade, is going to be moving from Memphis to New Orleans, along with the 17th overall pick for the Memphis Grizzlies, in exchange for Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, and 2 future first-round picks from the New Orleans Pelicans, including the number 10 overall on Thursday's draft. They're also exchanging their second-round picks in Thursday's draft as well. What are your initial thoughts on that, Trevor?
My first thoughts, I just want to be clear that it came out about an hour after this trade was released earlier today that Eric Bledsoe is not planning to be a Memphis Grizzly. So I think that it has implications further beyond just today. But nonetheless, until we see how that develops and plays out, I really like it. Memphis got what I think is a great, upgrade in terms of a player. I think both centers are give or take good players, but I do like Adams, and I do like how he's going to fit, hopefully, into that Memphis system. But nonetheless, it's not about Steven Adams. It's about the 10th overall pick. And the implications for me, first reaction, are the fact that I really feel like this takes the Pelicans out of a major draft move, because 10 was kind of their key token piece. And I'm really surprised that this was the package that they went for, also 3 days earlier than expected. So just thought that was interesting.
So we're going to stop and we're going to backtrack to that you think that Memphis got an upgrade by switching Jonas Valanciunas for Steven Adams.
Not necessarily an upgrade. I just think Steven Adams
no downgrade. That's why the 10th pick is going to Memphis.
I think
Jonas
Steven Adams
is a much better basketball player.
He is. No, he is 100%. But I think Adams is going to, for the downgrade they got, fit the system really well. I think it's a great system fit. Let me just be 100% clear to everyone. Jonas Valanciunas is a better player. He's proved that, especially in that time in Memphis. I think we thought when he got traded from Toronto to Memphis, he might have got forgotten about a little bit. But Adams is going to be a good fit. Obviously, it's a short-term fit. They're going to obviously have Jaren Jackson Jr., and they're going to probably try to get a guy in the next couple of drafts. And they're just continue to build around John Morant. I like it because I now have no idea. Some of my stuff with the 10th overall pick here with the Pelicans completely went out the window, because I think it's a completely different answer. When we get to the 10th pick, it's now going to be Memphis. I'm going to have to on the fly come up with an opinion. So it changes a lot of what I think, because the Pelicans really could have got a guy like Davion Mitchell there at 10. And now it's like, if he falls that far anyway. But it just completely throws everything out of whack. And this, I feel like, is the first domino of the draft craziness with the trades this week. I really do.
Yeah, my thought, I think that you're still going to be looking at somebody's going to take, a wing player at that spot, because Memphis has their star guard, ball handler, and they have their big man in Jaren Jackson Jr., we think, depending on how locked in they are to Triple J in the future. But it's interesting to see that move. I don't know if this isn't really early for a draft. This is pretty late for a draft to have that move. We're only 3 days out at this point. And you don't see as much, unless you're talking back half of the lottery, you see lottery picks moved on the night, typically. I think it'll be interesting going forward. It definitely opens up a lot of cap space for New Orleans. I like the fit of having Jonas Valanciunas there. Whether he works well playing with Zion at the same time will be interesting to see. Probably if they don't re-sign Lonzo Ball, Valanciunas it's probably their second most skilled scorer on the team behind Zion.
Brandon Ingram hasn't died. No, Lonzo. So the thing with Lonzo now, this, like I said, this is the first domino of many. They originally had zero plans, and this was reported by Shams and confirmed by a lot of people that they had no plans whatsoever bringing Lonzo Ball back. He's been in New York talks. He's been in Indiana and a couple other places. This now opens up the path where they can keep him, but why? I feel like at this point, there's something bigger here that New Orleans is doing. This might be a first trade of 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where this is. And now it leaves me baffled because up until about 3 hours ago, I felt pretty prepared coming into this part of the draft when we got to 10. Now I mean, it's up in the air. I don't know.
If New Orleans does not re-sign Lonzo Ball, which I feel like they really should after the vast improvement he's made, who plays point guard?
Zion. There's a point where
like
the point forward era.
I understand this whole have your star player bring the ball up court, but Zion Williamson's not a point guard, and that does not fit at all.
Absolutely not. No, what I was getting at is just I think it's more so now around that's probably where they're centering the next piece is like maybe Lonzo isn't the guy, but sign and trades are so heavy right now. I just see it working out where there's a sign and trade scenario going to New York or going to, like I said, in Indiana, going to a Clippers if they can't re-sign the 4 of the 5 guys that were instrumental pieces for them going into
Chicago.
Chicago was a big one. I know.
See a scenario where Chicago, looking for an upgrade to contend now, would send Kobe White, for instance, to New Orleans in exchange.
If you're the Pelicans, you do that trade any day of the week, if you ask me. But I'm a big Kobe White guy. I have been since high school.
I think Lonzo's a much more polished player now. It's more of a who wants to win now kind of move. How much money do you want to spend as well kind of move? Because Kobe White's not as polished at the moment, but he's going to come cheaper.
And that's okay because the Pelicans, I think they need to just pump the brakes a little bit because I think this Zion. Yes, when there's smoke, there's fire. But this Zion family situation, not happy in New Orleans, wants him out, whatever. He's there for like most rookie extension contracts, whatever. He's there minimum the couple years of his rookie deal. And then if he resigns and then he's like, okay, I'm out, he gets maybe 5 years there. It's one of those things they obviously need to compete with Zion as soon as they can. But again, I believe he's not even able to legally drink alcohol yet, correct? He's under 21 still.
I think so.
He's 20. So
at the end of the day, 2 years left on his rookie contract, and then he would be a restricted free agent, which would mean the Pelicans have the ability to match any offer and keep him in New Orleans that he would be made.
Ultimately, it comes down to, like you said, who wants to win and how bad. If I'm the Bulls, they liked White when they picked him. I just don't see if Lonzo's that big of an upgrade. I think potential-wise, of course, Kobe White could be worth the swap there, but maybe. It's at the end of the day, I don't want to overlook this trade, but I also don't want to spend too much time on it because I personally don't feel like this is it for both teams here. I think Memphis gets a great pick at 10, depending on now, like I said, I'm going to come up with something on the fly about where I think they might position themselves because at 17, they were kind of, I think before it was at 17, they were taking a stab at somebody probably. This draft is loaded. I think it's loaded up the top 4, and we'll get to that in a moment. But it's also, I think it's pretty deep even into that 17 to 24 range. So it really does matter on who they pick and then who the Pelicans obviously eventually give or take here with Lonzo. I don't know. So lottery team
going into kind of the lottery mock and what the needs are, who's going to take who. So we can kick off, Trevor. Let's you start us out with your favorite NBA team, the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah. So I mentioned on lottery night that this was like worst case scenario for me as somebody and by the way, Detroit, this is no disrespect. I see the path you're on. I like Stewart. I like Sadiq Bey. I liked Killian Hayes up until he wasn't able to shoot the ball the moment he entered the NBA. But look, this is disclaimer. This is Josh and I not brushing quickly over picks 1 through 4. I really think it's a matter of those are the 4 guys. I don't have to really say them, but I will. Kate Cunningham, Mobley, Green, and Suggs. Those are the guys. It's just a matter of in what order, really, how 1, 2, 3 falls. We're not going to spend forever, to be clear, on these 4 guys. It's just a matter of we want to make sure our opinions are clear on them. So team needs for Detroit. I make this joke all the time. I'm going to make this joke for the top 4, but it's quite literally everything.
Everything.
The top 3, right? I think Toronto's in a better position. A lot of people think we'll get to them in a moment.
No.
But they need a star, they being Detroit, that can change the course of their franchise. And I put in quotes, cough, cough, Cade Cunningham. I get the Mobley being like one of the best potential guys, whatever. I heard a couple of guys on the Ringer talking about this earlier today, how Mobley has the potential to be like this next generational guy that's 7 foot bringing that all up. I see it. I just don't see how Cade Cunningham's floor isn't enough to take him and be like, at worst, he's Lonzo Ball. I mean, that seems like a really low floor. And I'm saying his floor is like, all-star, right? So I've never been this like guy who's like, oh my God, Cade's this generational player. I'm not like that. I haven't been like that since high school for him. I'm just clear that he's the guy for Detroit here, even though they are making it very clear to everyone that it's a 3-man race for them. So that's why I think trades are going to happen left and right coming up here. So to me, not spending much time on it, I don't think he's some generational talent genuinely, but I think he's a great player. I think his floor is higher than his ceiling.
Well, I think he is a generational talent personally, but he was insane at Oklahoma State. That program really hadn't been very good at basketball, and they were a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament this past year, really just because of Cade Cunningham. He averaged 20 points per game at Oklahoma State. Averaging 20 points per game in college is outrageous to average 20 or higher. And he was also pulling boards. He won almost every award you could think of: Big 12 Player of the Year, Big 12 Rookie of the Year, All Big 12, Big 12 All Freshman. He was an absolute superstar and did his best to carry that team on his back as far as he could. He is a game-changing talent for your franchise, and I think he's going to eventually be an NBA All-Star and the kind of guy that you look to for a franchise. And I understand like the talent that is there with your Greens and your Mobleys and your Suggs, but the number 1 pick should be a 1 pick. I think it's like the Zion Williamson pick for the Pelicans. This should be a foregone conclusion at this point.
And yet Detroit is making it known of the dumpster fire that they are, and they're okay with everyone understanding that this is a top 3 race for them, like I said. So it's going to be hilarious to watch this. I don't think they move it. I just think there's a bigger chance, to be clear to me, I think there's a bigger chance from everything I'm seeing that they take Mobley than they trade 1 to get Green at maybe 3 or however it works out, right? So it's going to be weird. It's going to be fun. Anything else, Josh, on Detroit before we keep rolling? Because like I said, these top 3 or 4 isn't necessarily in depth and detail because it's really just going to be a matter of how it happens. It's something could develop in the next 2 days, but we know it's going to be Green, Mobley, and Cunningham in that order. That's not that order, sorry, in that form and somehow. So
yeah,
any thoughts on Detroit before we go to Houston?
No, not really. I hope Detroit makes the right decision. If they don't, Houston will select Cade Cunningham. So it's not.
I do also want to
fall that far.
I do also want to hit on this for other picks for these teams because obviously the lottery, there's a couple teams that have multiple lottery picks, not to be confused here when we finish the lottery and it's like 12 teams instead of 14. But Detroit's not one of those teams. Detroit has 1 in the first round, of course. They have 37 from Toronto, 42 from Charlotte, and 52 from the Lakers. So they've got a multitude of second-round picks, guys like Isaiah Stewart and Sadiq Bey. I know they weren't second-round picks. I'm just using them as examples of guys that they can really hit on, and they've actually showed me a lot of great improvement despite my lashness. Houston at 2, who do you think they pick? And overall, is this a pick that Houston kind of, do you think they shop it? Is that something you think they shop heavily, or is it just they want their guy?
So I don't think they're going to shop it. I think they will make the pick. And for the last few weeks, I have been saying that I thought it was clearly Evan Mobley, dominant big man, Houston big man series. I'm starting to change my mind toward Jalen Green. I think part of it comes with that I had not seen much of him until recently because he spent the season playing in the G League with Team Ignite. I think Jalen Green is probably the second best player in this draft. He's a much more accomplished scorer than I expected for his age. And also given Houston currently having Christian Wood on roster and seeming to want to go with him moving forward, and their penchant for not going after these big men, given that they gave away Clint Capella, I think Houston will select Jalen Green.
I can't I can't brush over the fact that Mobley, and you're not the only person to say this, so this is not a knock on you or an attack on anybody. I just can't see how the thought process is Christian Wood is the reason you don't take Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley, I'm not saying.
Wait, don't get me wrong. The reason is not Christian Wood is the reason you don't pick Evan Mobley. The reason is Jalen Green
is a good player.
Better than I think than Evan Mobley.
I think it's close. I'm not going to sit here and debate Evan Mobley on who's better, right? My thought process here is it's two things. It's a two-part answer for me. It's the fact that I feel like everyone is now saying that Green's two, and I'm just going to go with how history repeats itself, and I sometimes don't feel like that's always going to be how it goes. I think that we keep brushing over the fact that for the last 18 months, it's been Cade Cunningham and Mobley. I almost said Isaiah Mobley. It's Evan, obviously. He has a brother, of course. I think we're just going to keep looking past that until the moment Houston is there and nothing happens and they pick Mobley and then move on. And here's why I think that's hilarious. And unless you have anything else on Houston, I think Mobley's the pick. And I think that puts the Cavs in a hilariously awful spot because I think they think that Mobley's falling to 3. And it puts these two positions where the Cavs have been cleared. Like Sexton's gone, right? Like Sexton, it's just a matter of the writing's on the wall. It's just a matter of where and how. New York, I've seen thrown around a lot of places, right? But my thing here is that if you're just going on generational talent or potential talent, I'm going to throw the word generational out for a moment. Mobley, I think, is the pick there, although you're not wrong with either one of them. I really don't. I think any team here is right, but Cleveland specifically, I think this is hilarious. They see it as a two-people draft right now, a two-person draft pretty heavily because they think Green is going there too. So they think fit-wise, I think it's going to be funny when you see Green go 3rd or the Cavs go, all right, Thunder, what you got for me? Is it Shea? Is it that 16th pick? Is it that 18th pick? I forgot about trivia that I'm still mad about. What is it, right? And then these packages start flying off the wall, and then you've got 18 teams trying to trade for the 3rd pick. So hilariously, I think that's a great transition into Cleveland unless you have more thoughts on Houston. I think Houston takes a generational talent in Mobley.
No, so I think and it might come from how we think this is going to go differently. I think Green going at 2, I think Cleveland is expecting Green to get to them and want to take Green because Sexton is like, we've come to I don't understand why Sexton
is like Garland.
In Cleveland.
They really do like Garland. I think that's.
But they did so well playing together, but that's for a different time.
Sexland, baby.
Yeah, they did so well together, and I don't understand the strategy there. They know he's gone, so they want a replacement, and I'm not so sure because they went out in the middle of the season and brought Jared Allen in to be their young big man of the future. And so what they're looking at is guard, and they want it to be Jalen Green. But if the Rockets pick Jalen Green, then they're in a situation where do you pick Mobley because he's the best player? They should. Do you shop the pick everywhere? Or do they go with their initial plan of picking a star guard and reach down to the next best player under Mobley and pick Jalen Suggs?
Absolutely not. I'm
not saying they should, but we're looking at.
Could they? Absolutely.
Could they? Yeah, they absolutely could.
They absolutely won't, is my opinion. So the reason I think this is intriguing too is because, and I'll tie these two together before we move on to Toronto here because we've got a lot to cover. But Houston does have 23 from Portland and 24 from Milwaukee. So knowing that, they've got picks that they know they can move if they need to. If Houston wants to say, you know what, we like Mobley or Green, God forbid, whoever. We'll take them. We'll take one or the other. It doesn't matter. Hey, trying to think of a team in like the 8 range. I can look obviously very quickly.
Orlando's 8.
Sacramento's a team that I know can do some spicy, weird stuff. So Sacramento's like, hey, here's Bagley. I don't know. Then you start getting weird with that. I'm not trying to do hypothetical trades today. This is not what this is about. My thought
Bagley does want out of Sacramento, so it's not
absolutely. I think there's a couple of guys there that are a couple of teams there that they go, well, if we're not getting at our guy, this draft's loaded. Let's go. Let's move back now. Let's move back quick because there's teams that are very clearly wanting to move up. I have nothing else to say about the Cavs. Kobe Altman has made, I'm not going to say mistake, but mistake after mistake over the last couple of years, and I just don't like where the direction of this team is headed. I agree with you. I think at this point they're becoming my next just Detroit joke team. It all depends on what they do in the next couple of years. And I think getting a guy like Mobley will help them ultimately. I think it'll be better for them if he falls. Toronto, Josh, any
Yeah, to make it clear, I think the Cavs should take Mobley.
assuming he gets there.
Yeah, I think anyone should at that point. I think he's that number 3, and I think that's what should happen there.
So thoughts on the Raptors here? Because I feel like at this point, I have not seen a single mock draft that does not have Jalen Suggs going to Toronto.
Yeah, I think at this point now that we talked about our top 4, and those 3 are out, and so there's one left. I think it's about a foregone conclusion Kyle Lowry will not be a Toronto Raptor next season,
Absolutely.
I expect. And so I really think that minus a few of the young talents they have, Toronto kind of needs to tear down in the short term and kind of rebuild over the next couple years to get back. And that starts with your leader at point guard, and that's Jalen Suggs. He was the leader. I would say he was the on-court leader of that Gonzaga team, carrying them as far as they went, only losing one game there, coming up quite short to Baylor. We've seen guys' stock really rise and teams fall in love with guys based on things they did in the NCAA tournament. And there's not a single guy who would be more synonymous in this past year's tournament than Suggs, who hit a half-court game winner in the Final Four. He should be the popular pick, and I think he's going to do well.
My issue here is that I don't love the. Okay, first of all, before I say anything, the Kyle Lowry to DeRozan stuff is completely smoke. To DeRozan, sorry, the Kyle Lowry and DeRozan stuff to the Lakers is smoke. But regardless, I do like a backcourt of Lowry and Suggs. I think not Lowry, oh my gosh, Fred VanVleet and Suggs. I think they can play together. I really do like that because Fred VanVleet, people forget, he's still a young player. Yeah, I believe he's 25, if not 26. He's young. He's a little bit older than your average young player that they're trying to build around. They do like him. He's going to be on that team for a long time.
27.
So I was in that range. Good. The reason I'm not like necessarily going, okay, it's Suggs here. It is Suggs. I think it's clearly Suggs. However, they can't not at least really take a detailed look at some of these prototype 3-and-D type guys that are right behind him. However, though, if Suggs' ceiling is Jason Kidd, like I've seen in terms of just the playmaking ability and the size and the ability to score and the ability to, Jason Kidd did not get a jumper until he was in Dallas, basically. I think Jalen Suggs works on his jumper. He's a gym rat, former football player. There's a lot of things about Jalen Suggs that I like. Yes, I think it's Jalen Suggs, and I don't think we spend much more time on it because ultimately I don't know where the Raptors are, but I think they're a lot farther away or a lot closer. I'm sorry. You said they were further away from it. It's taken a few years to. I don't see them being bad if they take Suggs, and you've got a Siakam, Suggs, and VanVleet little 3 there. I don't see them winning the East, but I don't see them missing the playoffs either. I see them as a play-in kind of that 7-8 range, a little bit lower than we both had them coming into this season, and they obviously squandered all of our expectation of them. They're not bad. Siakam's a young player that is going to keep getting better. I think Siakam is still somewhat untapped. I think Suggs is a great player for his development. So that's why in my long-winded answer, unfortunately, it is Suggs.
Go to the Orlando Magic.
This is where it gets weird.
Yeah.
This is where it gets weird.
You have in Orlando the most stripped down team in the NBA. I'm going to go through and just name off. Here are the pieces that should probably be in Orlando in the future to show you how the team is stripped down at this point. RJ Hampton, Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, Mohamed Bamba, Jonathan Isaac, and Wendell Carter. That's 6 players.
It's not bad.
That's the only thing locked in about this roster is those 6. You field 15 in the NBA.
That's also
not. We really don't know what Orlando is going to look like.
Those 6 also might not be entirely safe, some of them, depending on how they play.
No.
I'm curious to know what you think because I am going strictly off of what I'm reading and what I'm seeing with mocks because I don't know where Orlando's head at. It's a similar position with Toronto. I just don't know where their head's at. I know where the media thinks their head's at, but they're clearly the most, and it sucks that they got the 5th pick. They're the most, here's where we are. I know where their head's at in terms of they're in full rebuild mode. They made that clear at the trade deadline. You took the words out of my mouth with the strip down thing. Like, that's the best example. They just said, you get this guy and you get this guy and you get this guy. And that was it. And then we were like, holy crap, this team in Orlando is horrible. Who is the next piece for them, centerpiece wise, that gets them in the next 10 years of their franchise?
So I think that's a really difficult question between.
I knew you were going to say
that. There's two players there that you make a decision between. Some people think there's three, but I don't think Davion Mitchell is as much in play here. I think Orlando is kind of set with the guards they're kind of trying to build around, and they're not going to go for a guy like Davion Mitchell. It's between Scotty Barnes and Jonathan Kuminga. If I think that Jonathan Kuminga might have a higher ceiling than Scotty Barnes. But Barnes is much better right now. He's older. He's a little bit bigger, not a lot bigger, but a little bit bigger muscle-wise than Kuminga. And he's got that experience kind of as a team leader with Florida State last season. Kuminga, however, is a younger player. He's 18 years old, has not yet turned 19, has a ton of great physical traits, was a remarkable defender, and a high motor guy with G League Ignite. I think Orlando ends up going Scotty Barnes. If they're going long-term rebuild, I don't think it's a bad decision to go with Jonathan Kuminga, a guy that whoever takes him will need to take time on in order to get the full potential out of.
I'm going to be brief, and I'll tell you why. One, I'm going to now, as we get into the back half of the lottery, I'm not necessarily throwing picks off the wall here. I'm throwing team needs here, because team need for Orlando, again, is everything. I'm going to save my answer to that when we get to our top 5 favorite prospects, because it will answer everything that you just said in my rebuttal to it, and we can spend time there, because I think it's one of those two guys. I will divulge why it's one of those two guys, or which one I think it is, very shortly. Yes, Davion Mitchell is not going here at 5, obviously. It's just a matter of which one of those two guys it is, which leaves me good.
Would we also agree that whoever the Magic don't take is taken by Oklahoma City at 6?
No, unfortunately not.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why I was like, and that brings us to Oklahoma City. One of two things is playing out for Oklahoma City, and I'll tell you what, unfortunately, I think is going to happen. And this is nothing on James Bouknight. I think James Bouknight is the fit, sort of, and I hesitated, pause.
Okay.
He fits beside Shea. Hold on. But I think it's the wrong pick.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the wrong pick personally, and I'll divulge later on who I think it is.
Is fit a good thing for a team like Oklahoma City to be looking at right now?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Shea is clearly the guy to build right now around.
Well, yeah, but other than Shea and Pokusevski, maybe Baisley,
who's the
and Dort. Who is Oklahoma City building around? Like, what fit is there to be had? There's no one.
You have to think how you want the guy to fit in your franchise and fit in your lineup for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I get that.
That's what I'm looking at it as. Bouknight's a great scorer. Like you pointed out to me prior to recording, 30% from 3 in college. Not great.
29.5.
Okay.
He did not crack 30% from 3.
I'll give him the subtle roundup. My point being here, like I said, these 2 picks I'll save in a little while here because it'll make sense. But however, I don't hate anything they do because, like you mentioned, what position they're in. I think they're more likely to take Bouknight at 6 than they are to trade up. However, that depends on how the first 3 happens. I think they are the prime time, like I mentioned. I actually mentioned this about 3 weeks ago, that I think them in Cleveland, prior to any of this Mobley falling crap, I think they're a prime target for 16, 18, and 6 and go, hey, Cleveland, here's such and such, and let's do this thing, right? It's Sam Presti at the end of the day. We must not doubt the Sam Presti. Josh, who do you think they take at 6? And we can move on because we're coming up to probably the most exciting pick of the lottery, believe it or not. It's at 7.
I think it should easily be Kuminga, put more athletic raw talent in Oklahoma City, and
unless
they honestly, if you want to hear me say what I think they really should do, is package the picks and go up to number 3. But
that's what I've been saying.
That's what they should do. If they pick at 6, it should be Kuminga. But to be honest, they have too many picks as it is. I'm not saying too many, like to be exaggerating. They have like 30. There's only 15 guys you can put on a roster. You need to start trading multiple of those to go up to one big player and one big name. And it would make all the sense in the world for them to try to jump to 3 and get the franchise talent.
Our resident Thunder fan, Grayson, has talked himself into, from text this week after his recording with us, he's talked himself into Book Knight if it happens. It's not the guy he wants. Just wanted to make that clear. That's the only fan we have in the early part of the lottery, other than the next pick we're about to divulge here. The issue is, and also he said it could be Scotty Barnes. At this point, I feel like it's writing on the wall for Barnes to Orlando, but we'll find out. This is the one that I was least least looking forward to talking about in the lottery, because I genuinely, Josh, when I tell you, I have zero idea what's going to happen, and I have zero idea how to shape an opinion on what's going to happen. I'm going to look at it from this. They're clear that 7's not being picked. Like, they've made that completely clear.
But
they
just about made that clear last year about number 2.
It's 2, though.
And now they have that guy. And they still don't want him.
Right.
From what we can tell. They sometimes they claim they do publicly, but all of the analysts say no. That they don't want that guy.
They want a ring. They don't care what happens.
I don't know what they do. Like, I had like the mock draft written down of saying James Bouknight just because he's that next best player to go to Golden State. Because it doesn't matter what we say for Golden State, because even if they pick somebody, they're going to be trying to trade him anyway. So 100%. I just don't understand what the point. They're going to try to trade him on draft night regardless, because they are talking about all these sweeping decisions to go for Bradley Beal in Washington, which is getting more traction than the Damian Lillard theory that I threw out there before. But the Damian Lillard thing is gaining traction. I don't know. Golden State's trying to build this lethal arsenal, murderer's row of shooters behind the 3-point line so they can stand around and just pass until they drain a 3 on every possession.
What's unclear or what's unfit for this discussion is the fact that I don't think even know the direction of this pick, and we're 24 or 48. We're 72 hours away from the draft. Less than. My point being is this is not one I'm spending any more time on. If they do take this pick and they don't trade it, it's Kispert, Wagner, I think, and Davion Mitchell, a handful of those kind of guys. It's anybody that I just named. It's just a matter of which one they like the most.
So you're saying Mitchell is a possibility there, but not Bouknight if he's not picked before.
Or Bouknight, I'm sorry. That was the one I knew I left somebody out. Bouknight, but I think they like the defensive potential of Mitchell. He's just older. He also fits them now, and I told you their goal ultimately is a ring. And I think
so. I think they're going to try to swing one of those trades. And even if they have to pick a guy in the meantime, I don't know if they keep it.
100%. They're also a team, like I mentioned before, we're not getting this weird lottery, like mock draft confused here, lottery preview. But Magic, obviously, like we mentioned earlier, we'll cover in just a moment as we're transitioning to 8. The Magic also have 8 from that trade to Chicago for Vucevic. And the Warriors also have 14, which I think are very instrumental there in getting something. If they do, they'll have that back of the lottery pick as well. That's why I necessarily don't want to throw picks out the wall here, because we'll get to some guys that we think should be picked. We'll get through our flavors, our favorite players. And at the end of the day, at this point, it's just, we're not mock draft guys. We're guys that are covering the draft for you guys, giving our opinions on what we think could happen and should happen. So I think technically I almost skipped Orlando, like I just mentioned before. So Orlando has another pick at 8. It's the same thing. I'm not throwing out players here, but like, are they a trade package potential?
I would say no. I think Orlando should want to pick there.
They see a value in having 2 top 10 picks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then we agree. Nothing to diverge.
Yeah.
Okay. Sacramento at 9.
We're not going to say who they're going to pick, or we just.
I mean, what do you think? I mean, I genuinely after 7, I don't know.
Because I'm just going to bring out who I think I'm saying will be picked. I'm not going to go as much into should. My guess would probably be Keon Johnson
Really?
out of Tennessee.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an absolute athletic freak. I think his vertical was top
The
at the
highest ever.
combine.
Highest ever.
Yeah, no, it was ridiculous. And you go with somebody who's an absolute athlete at that position kind of later, mid to late lottery, and hope you can develop them on a team that's not trying to win right now.
I couldn't tell you who they're going to pick. This is a draft where 8 could be somebody that a lot of people think could go at 13, who think a lot of people could go at 6, who a lot of people think could go at 24. This draft is weird from about now until 24. I think a guy that will be slept on, and we can snip this right here, editors. Haha, me. That I think Josh Giddey is a guy that might get up there really high that could go here at 8. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying snip this later, and if I'm right, I'll look right. Josh Giddey is a guy they really, really liked in a lot of workouts. That's the only reason I say that, jokingly. Sacramento at 9. I just want to put a personal apology because I think this is probably the team we've never mentioned consistently on this podcast, or at least once. I can't think of a segment where we talked about the Kings this year, and I feel bad about it. However, Sacramento, you're at 9, and you have a core of Fox, Bagley, who wants out, and Heald. This is not a great place to be in. And at this point, you just got to pray you get a Donovan Mitchell type guy out of this 9 to 14 range here, throwing out a late lottery guy, Devin Booker, guys like that, right? And this draft is probably a draft you could do that. So, gosh, who do you think they get? Or what are your thoughts on the Kings? Because I think we're in just utter turmoil where we see another 10 years of Kings misery.
There was a point a couple years ago where it looked like the Kings were finally starting to figure it out. And it was just misheld belief in Sacramento for some reason to think that. I don't know what they do here. Well, based on, if you look at all the buzz, you want to say that they're going to go Franz Wagner from Michigan.
Yep.
I'm not in love with Franz Wagner as a player. I feel like it's definitely something that Vlade Divac in Sacramento would want to do, and that it feels like it isn't going to work out like they think it is.
Say he reminds you of another Michigan shooting guard that they took in the top 10 before. Say Nick Stauskas. I'm sorry.
He doesn't even shoot as well as Stauskas, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kings fans, we apologize so wholeheartedly.
I apologize, Kings fans, for the lack of hope and optimism I have about you guys in this pick. But honestly, I have a lot of real lack of hope and optimism.
Shame on both of us for getting Tyrese Halliburton as well. Great piece there. Top 3 in Rookie of the Year voting. I think a guy that would help them here, I do like the Keon Johnson one, like you mentioned. I don't love Usman Garuba. I haven't done much tape on him, unfortunately. Another Josh Giddey candidate. And I just, at that point, there is a little bit of a drop-off. I think they look at a guy like maybe a Sharif Cooper, but that's starting to get into late lottery, mid to first round there. Maybe Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy's stock continues to rise, and he's another guy that's going to get weird. I'm going to get into my guy that I think will go next here. Now,
so I want to
prior
pause
to the Pelicans
just because of an interesting thing that I've seen. There are a lot of reports going around through NBA analysts, reputable enough for I think to say it. The report is that the Oklahoma City Thunder offered Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to the Detroit Pistons for the number 1 pick, and Detroit declined.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I don't doubt that.
Which is interesting because previously the OKC standpoint has been that Gilgeous-Alexander is untouchable. He's the future.
Funny you say that. Grayson just texted me actually 30 minutes ago, and I didn't open it. So that probably is what you were going to get at. It says OKC offered Shai and 6 for 1. Detroit climbed that offer, and he sent me a gif of a cap. So I don't know where we are with that, and I don't know how Detroit feels. So again, draft night trades are going to be at their peak, and I'm so excited. I don't really know what to think of that. I really don't. I
Okay,
think a guy
so
too a guy that I skipped over that I just brain farted on was Jalen Johnson. I think Jalen Johnson's a pick that they need a wing. I think you got a lot of potential if they blow it up and they keep Fox and Johnson and maybe one of the other guys left there, Halliburton. I think he's a good pick there as well.
okay, so I'm going to go ahead and throw in there because I don't know when else we were going to throw in this segment. I think Jalen Johnson would be my lottery bust if a team reaches for him. And there's a specific reason why.
Help.
He has a lot of skills that look great. He has some pretty good size, and he looked really good at Duke. There are serious concerns about his commitment levels and how he's going to deal with coaching staffs. Mike Krzyzewski is one of the most beloved college coaches in the history of college basketball. And Jalen Johnson quit on Mike Krzyzewski and quit on the Duke Blue Devils midseason in college basketball. We've seen players, because of injury, kind of sit out a few games left to help their draft stock, but there aren't many guys that we've seen completely leave the team midseason. And I would have serious apprehension about taking Jalen Johnson in the lottery.
I think a team who needs potential and a guy that's going to develop like that, I think they look past that if they can and look at potential. However, I'm not high on him either. I'm not sitting here and saying he's a draft bust or like a lottery bust, but he's definitely a guy that's his high is way farther away from his low. Like I think there's a gap there that he has to fill with effort. And obviously the injury concerns, like I mentioned, when you said there's something missing, he missed a lot of his senior year in high school going into Duke and then missed, a good portion. He played only 13 games at Duke. I believe it was 12, 13 games. I can't find how much I like him or love him. I really can't. I just think he's a good fit for Sacramento. Let's quickly get through so we can get to the Hornets. It's been 30 minutes on the Hornets. Let's finish the back half of the lottery here so we can get into our 5 favorite players. But prior to this segment beginning, obviously the trade kind of messed this up. So at New Orleans at 10 here, I had them taking whoever was left over between that slew of guys in that range there. I think Davion Mitchell's a great fit. I think he's a guy that's probably going to slide. My thought stays the same with Memphis. I think he's a great fit for Memphis. I also think that Moses Moody is a great fit for Memphis. I think he's a guy that's going to be one of the ones that I've seen a lot that's going to shoot up. Whether he shoots up all the way to 10, I don't know. I think Moses Moody's a good pick there. I think if Keon Johnson's still left, he's a good pick there. That's where I am. And I don't really know because this is just totally off of 5 minutes spending on figuring out what Memphis could do.
Yeah, I think based on how good we saw this Memphis team be last year with just Ja Morant carrying the scoring load, I think adding a Davion Mitchell, who's older, an incredible scorer, and is coming off being a proven winner this past season with Baylor, would be a good pick for the backcourt with Ja Morant.
All right. We won't delay the inevitable, Josh. At the 11th pick, insert the draft sound here, the Charlotte Hornets select who? Not in your opinion. This is who you think they will take, and I'll get to your opinion.
Who they will take?
Who will they take, Josh, if what we've talked about so far is what runs the course?
Right now, I think it's going to be Kai Jones from Texas.
Not Kispert. You don't think? I know.
No, I don't think it's Kispert.
Okay.
So the difference being that, yeah, they're both big men. They're kind of the only big men that are going to be there, like in that range, other than maybe a Jalen Johnson, but not that big. He's only 6'8", 6'9", I believe. Kai Jones is the rim defender. He's the super athlete. And that's what Charlotte's looking for. They have PJ Washington that you look at as he's a 6'8", 6'9", that can do kind of what Corey Kispert can do. And so it wouldn't really make sense to select a guy like him. They want the missing piece in Charlotte, and James Borrego talked about it midseason in post-game press conferences, is that big man that's going to be able to defend and to get rebounds. Cody Zeller has done it in the past when he's not injured, but he's injured at least 25 games a year.
It's also Cody Zeller. It's not a potential guy that could be your franchise center.
Yeah, it's a guy that's been there for a long time in Zeller, who they're not going to re-sign in the offseason.
My thought process before I ask you who you want it to be, because you're a smart NBA fan. I'm curious what you think is different from what they will take. I'm curious if it's different because after hearing the Kai Jones thing, I think you're probably on the same page. But I will say, hilariously, we don't disagree. I think Kai Jones is the pick here at 11. I really do. I've been on that for a couple of days. I've really been trying to get this pick right because I think it's fun to get our teams right in this lottery. I'll get to mine in a little while. Maybe if I feel up to it, having the 22nd overall pick. But I do like Kai Jones. I think it's interesting noted that he's worked out now twice for the Hornets. And he's also quoted in interviews pre-draft saying that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and LaMelo Ball are two guys that would make him better. Yeah. Now, not saying he's going 6, but just interesting to note that he's trying to at least put that buzz there. I just think it's great to have an active big man who is going to, like you said, catch rebounds and block shots and also be active pick and roll with LaMelo. LaMelo's your guy, your cornerstone piece, right? And pick and roll is something that, despite all the three-point shooting bursts that we're in here in the era that we're in, pick and roll is still one of the most important things, if not the most important things in basketball, both on offense and being able to defend it. Kai Jones can do both of those things pretty well. The Kispert thought there is that, you have a shot maker. You have a guy that's going to hopefully make shots for LaMelo. I get it, right? It's going to be interesting to see who it is.
So I'm gonna put this out there. The Hornets have taken a lot of guys like that over and over and over again, and it hasn't worked one time. Cody Zeller and Frank Kaminsky in back-to-back seasons are the biggest culprits of them doing this. And picking Corey Kispert just feels like to me picking and nothing against it here, but a worse Frank Kaminsky. Frank Kaminsky he was a monster at Wisconsin.
He's a big man, though. Kispert's not a big man. Kispert's a guy that you want to be able to make shots for you. Hopefully.
But Kaminsky was a 3-point.
Yeah, I forget his 3-point
baller with Wisconsin. Led the team to the national championship game, unseating an undefeated Kentucky team. I do like Corey Kispert a lot, and I think he's going to be a great player for some team. I just don't think it fits in Charlotte.
So again, who do you want? Do you want Kai Jones? I think that's what you're trying to tell me.
So now we're going to have to switch kind of tracks here in direction. The Hornets desperately need an athletic, shot blocking, rebounding big man. I really don't like anyone in this draft for that. Kai Jones makes the most sense if you're going to do that here. I'm not in love with him at 11. I think there is better talent in that area than Kai Jones.
Are we about to agree on this for the second thing on this Hornets?
Here's where it comes into if this player doesn't drastically, like if someone doesn't reach for this player ahead of time, because that could happen. But if this player slides, Josh Giddey is the best.
I knew it. Let's go.
To go with.
Let's go. So that's the guy. And I also think Alperen Sengun is a really
I also like Shingi.
Scary pick. Yeah, I think it's a very scary pick because if he works out well potential-wise like he has been overseas, I think he's going to be great for Charlotte. Unfortunately, I don't think that's who they take. I still think they take Kai.
Mm-hmm.
I
don't think I'm going to get what I want unless Kai Jones is taken ahead of time.
Giddey might be gone before 11. I know that's crazy. It might be. However, he also might be available, and Charlotte might go, this guy's really good. He was one of the best high school mixtapes I think I've ever seen.
He's a walking triple-double.
He's crazy, right? And
to put this for people in perspective, for people listening, in pro basketball in Australia, he played for the Adelaide 36ers. He averaged, now this is averaging in a professional basketball league, so that we're talking at a reasonably higher difficulty than the NCAA. 11 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, 7.5 assists per game. He's a walking triple-double. I'm not quite sure that LaMelo Ball's numbers in New Zealand were quite that impressive. He scored more, but I'm not quite sure his passing and rebounding looked that good.
So I'll get to my nerdy takes on guys when we get into favorite players here very shortly, but I think Giddey has to develop a 3-point shot in a greater volume to
He has
where I
to
think he
develop
fits.
a shot in a greater volume.
Period, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's the key, though. Do they think he fits next to LaMelo? I don't know if it's perfect. However, the reason I say Kai and the reason I'll end with this is because I've tried to talk myself for the last couple of weeks into a Miles Turner package because he's actively being shot by Indiana. Same thing I tried to talk myself into with Andre Drummond, and I can't. So I'm moving on. The Spurs, I don't want to spend much more time on because I've already said the pick. I feel like if Sengun or if Sengun is there, or Sengun, however you say his name, that's the pick. It's so Spurs. It's so Greg Popovich. I also see Keon Johnson. Maybe if he falls that far, I don't know. I really don't know.
I had Giddey to San Antonio if still available.
And it's basically just a swap of those two is all it is.
There's a lot of international players that I like in that area, and that's just Popovich has never been afraid of international players the way other teams have been in the past.
Absolutely.
And
on the way out, on his way out in the next couple of years, why wouldn't he try to take a chance on somebody that could possibly develop quickly and get him a title or get him a playoff run? I don't think they ever win a title again under Greg Popovich. Lastly, another spot I think I liked Moody at. I just think there's a lot of guards here that go. Indiana, I don't really care at this point what happens. They need a ball handler that takes pressure off of Malcolm Brogdon, with Sabonis being the everything for that offense. Brogdon had to be the second best scorer last year with TJ Warren out for the entire year. Brogdon averaged 20 plus. It's not the guy you want Malcolm Brogdon to be, but he can be. I think they get a guy in that range like a Moody. I think Moody's a perfect pick for Indiana. However, I think he's gone before then. If, say, somebody starts slipping, maybe that pick changes. But I like either a combination of Moody, Murphy, or Sharif Cooper there. Any of the three guards left out of those three or four.
My thoughts, that's probably where Moody would go. I think it's really hard to predict at that point because we're kind of throwing players all over the place. It couldn't. I don't think anyone could go wrong at this point with if Alperen Şengün hasn't been selected yet. He's one that I think has some like borderline lottery talent that could fall really late and make someone very happy in the back half of the draft.
Yep.
But we'll see.
Yeah, we basically took the last 5 picks here just as like a less about fit, more about like, there's a couple guys here that we think fit. We're still going over team fit, but it's just a matter, or a team need. But here's the fun part. Obviously, this segment, like I said, this episode is going to be long. I'm excited, except for having to edit it. So, Josh, top 5 favorite players, and we don't have to spend forever on these. Obviously, I think we looked at this a couple different ways. Josh and I went back and forth for about 2 weeks on how we looked at this. I went with quote unquote. I went with the word favorite. And what I mean by favorite is guys I do genuinely like from their high school and college days, who I think will translate into the NBA. Also, guys who I think can shoot up a little bit higher than where they're drafted. So there's just subjectively, these lists are going to feel a little weird probably, but that's just where the thought process was. It's guys guys we like that might not be guys we've talked about already that are the surefire 1 through 4. So Josh, open it up with your number 1. And if we agree on one, we'll stop and talk about it. If we don't, we'll kind of play it as it goes, but we've got 10 guys possibly to go through. So let's roll.
So to give kind of clarification as to the way I looked through, I looked at players that I think are going to be drafted lower than where they should be based on their talent. As kind of guys I like, guys that will be a great value pick for the players where they pick them. I'm just going to go ahead and throw Josh Giddey there because I think he's a top 10 talent that I am not convinced that someone's going to grab in the top 10. And I think he's going to go in the lottery, but it's going to be 11 through 14, and he really shouldn't go that low.
I'm not spending much time on debating him. I agree with you. He's not on my 5, but I do like him. I do think he's got a lot of potential as a guy we'll look back on in a few years and go, he kind of reminds me of Eric Bledsoe or whoever, right? Just throwing guys out there. And you're like, okay, he turned out pretty well. And I do like the potential of that pick. He's just all around. He's smart. I think a lot of people forget he's a smart basketball player. And I think that's really important for any team in that range that you said he could go in. But yeah, I'm not surprised he gets up to 8. If he falls all the way to 14, then so be it. But I like him. Number 2 for me, or number 1 for me. So, or any more thoughts on Giddey, I guess. Is there anything else but you really do like Giddey. I mean, you went through it in the Hornets segment there. So to be clear to the listeners, I absolutely love this time of year. I've made that clear. I am a nerd when it comes to the prospect stuff. I'm going to save it for future years. I'm going to save the depth and detail, but I'm going to at least make it known. And I'll start with what I skipped, because I don't want to push it off any further. My favorite guy in this draft that I think has the potential. Yes, I get the top four that are going to be probably perennial all-stars, but my favorite guy here in this draft, and I've been high on this guy since he was basically just, this is a guy we think is in the top 5, hopefully. I think Jonathan Kuminga is a mistake if the Magic pass on him at 5, and if the Thunder to pass on him for boot night at 6. I've been texting Grayson for days. I am so high on this. I'll die on the hill if I'm wrong, but just I can't pass on a guy you mentioned already, who's 6'8", 7-foot wingspan, 220-pound frame, NBA body, high potential, super young, 18 years old potential. He's a versatile forward that can, with the right patience and the right development staff, he can be unbelievable. He's a scary 3-and-D guy that at this point every team needs. There's teams that have 3-and-D guys that are still looking for more. Look what look how important Jay Crowder was in the finals, trying to stop Giannis and trying to stop Chris Middleton. You're not going to have guys that are going to necessarily stop them, but you're going to have guys that can help him. I am really high on Kuminga because at the end of the day, I mentioned earlier, the pick and roll is going to be super important. And imagine a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Kuminga pick and roll next 5 years. I skipped the part about the Thunder where you were like, is there really a team need or a fit or whatever for the timeline of the Thunder? Yeah, he's 18. He's the perfect fit.
Meant their positional fit.
Positional. Oh, okay.
Age obviously makes sense. And I told you the Thunder should pick Jonathan Kuminga. But
good. And the thing that's going to kill me is he gets overwhelmed when he gets the ball. He's a guy that's got to learn how to play in an NBA offense more efficiently. When he has the ball and he's able to do what he wants to do with the ball, it's over. Like, he's going to score. But when he gets that overwhelmedness where he gets pushed by 2 or 3 guys, then it could start to get weird for Jonathan Kuminga. And I think that's going to come down to where he goes and how he's developed. So there's a lot more on Jonathan Kuminga, and I can make a TikTok about it if somebody really wants, and Josh can make a TikTok about his top guys, but we can go in more detail in another time and setting. But just a couple comparisons. His floor, and I mentioned his floor and ceiling kind of being all over the place. His floor is Jeff Green. I love player comparisons. I love player comparisons because I think
floor, I think, is very low for a player that's going to go as high as he is.
I know, and that's the part that scares me. His floor is Jeff Green. His ceiling is Luol Deng and Jaylen Brown. And that's where I can't figure out. Luol Deng was a better defender than Kuminga is right now, of course, and he can develop into being a better one. So I love comparisons. I have multiple comparisons for every guy on my list. I'll even throw comparisons for your guys off the top of my head if I need to. So, Josh, who is your number 2?
Number 2, there's a reason that I was trying not too much to disparage this player. Corey Kispert will fall because of age. And I think the comparison I'm going to make for what a team that's looking at Corey Kispert mid-first round is looking at is if you're a team that's trying to contend and you want an absolute stud of a 3-point shooter a la Cameron Johnson and what the Phoenix Suns pick Corey Kispert. He shot 44.5% from 3 at Gonzaga last year. He ranks in the 95th percentile in college basketball in spot-up shooting. He's the best, I feel completely confident, the best pure shooter in this draft, and someone who is not looking for that superstar take over the offense player, but is looking for an incredible spot-up shooter, which is so valuable right now. Corey Kispert will be a very good pick for somebody.
I agree. I don't love him. I'm not like over the moon about him. He's not my top 5, but I do love everything you said. I think he's a great pick where if somehow, some way, he won't fall out of the lottery, in my opinion. I don't genuinely think he does. But if he does, there's a lot of teams in that like playoff run, like you mentioned, like how Cam Johnson was for Phoenix. From basically 15 to 30, any team is going to love to have him. I just can't wrap my head around with all the potential of the guards in this draft in that range. If you need a guard, don't take Kispert. I mean, I don't take a guy that, yes, he's going to be impactful. I agree with you, though. I think he's great. Joe Harris comparison, Joe Ingles comparison, Joe Kispert. Just go ahead and change his name. By the way, to be clear, I should have asked you this 2 picks ago, but are these in any particular order?
Kind of based on where I think they're going to go. Like,
okay,
the player I think is going to go lower as I go down the list.
I'll be clear on mine. It's Kuminga, and then everybody else is in no particular order. So
Cool.
you could have figured that out very quickly. You know me well enough. Moses Moody is my second guy. That's why I didn't want to say him at these picks for the Pacers and for the 10 part. I have been reading so much stuff about him going at 10, and I don't want him to go that high because I want him to go to a team that he fits in. And I think a team he fits well in is any team that needs a safe pick for a scoring wing. He is a guy that is going to be a scoring wing and going to be good at it. A la Buddy Hield, Victor Oladipo, if his defensive potential continues to improve. I think he's a great Victor Oladipo comp. And then probably best case scenario, but I don't see it happening, is Donovan Mitchell. I think Buddy Hield's a great floor. If that's your floor, then I think you're doing something right?
Yeah.
And it's going to go in the late lottery. I really like Moody because that Arkansas offense went and revolved and just went wrong around Moody. If they went right, it was Moody's reasoning. If they went wrong, it was Moody's reasoning. So I just don't like how he can't finish as an attacker. In the NBA, you've got to be able to finish as an attacker. If he's going to be slashing, he's going to be scoring, he's got to be able to finish.
Which I think that is a skill you can develop
absolutely
more with the right coaching staff. We're not talking about overhauling a shot or anything of that sort. I think working out how to finish through contact is a lot easier of a thing to teach.
If you're a team that's sitting there and you're looking at, let's say Keon Johnson falls, right? Who I would call a project guy, a guy with a lot of athleticism, but you don't really know where he's going to turn out or how he's going to turn out. If you're a team that's kind of going to try to fight for the playoffs or try to get better in the playoffs, I'm just trying to think of examples. I know Indiana's a good one, but if you're looking at a project Keon Johnson guy, you're looking at Moses Moody. If I'm GM of whoever that team is, I'm taking Moody because he can be better. He can be better over time, and he can be good now. I do like Moody a lot. So, and he was fun to watch at Arkansas. Josh, number 3.
So I'm going to talk more about why I love Alperen Şengün, because he's not going to go in the lottery the more I read. And I think that's a mistake. I really think it's a mistake that he's not going in the lottery. Alperen Şengün played in the Turkish Super League last season, and he averaged 19 points per game as an 18-year-old. He might have been 19. I don't have the exact number right. As a teenager in the Turkish Super League, he averaged 19 points per game, a very competitive league. I want to say around 7 rebounds per game, and he won the Turkish Super League MVP award. Here is why I give that last stat as significant. Because recently there are a couple players in the NBA, one who prior to coming to America won the Adriatic Baltic League MVP award, who just won the NBA MVP award in Nikola Jokic. And then there was the Euro League MVP of a couple of years gone, Luka Doncic. There is a proven track record of guys who win a European professional MVP before coming to America being absolute stars because they can win against grown men who are way stronger than them. They can score, rebound, pass. They're unbelievable, and I think Alperen Şengün is going to be a great player for whoever grabs him.
All I'm going to say is I don't know if he's going to be, and you're not saying this either, I get it. He's not going to be MVP good, right? He could be really
I'm saying
good,
he could be.
He's so scary how his potential
is. He could be, because we got to realize just because he's going to go mid first round, Antetokounmpo went 15. He didn't look this good when he was coming out of Greece. So Şengün looks right now. He had to develop a lot.
Oh, we know. We saw the all the finals coverage. Do you remember this picture of Giannis we've showed you 70 times?
Yeah.
It's the same guy that right now ESPN's Giovanni has Garuba ahead of him, and I don't love that at all. I think he is a better player than him being Şengün. So my thought on Şengün is Andrea Bargnani walked so that Şengün ran. And I think he's – I know you love my comparisons. I think it's a great place for this. But no, seriously.
I think that he's going to have a lot less pressure given that he won't be the number one pick like Andrea Bargnani was.
No, to be clear, my player comparisons are solely play style based, or solely dimension and play style based. So Andrea Bargnani walked, so Alperen Şengün could run. Next on my list, I have nothing else to say about him because I think he'll be really good. Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas is a weird one. Do you have Cam Thomas before I divulge?
I don't have Cam
We are
Thomas.
oh my God, we are 6 for 6 right now. Oh, it's going to be so long. Cam Thomas, I'm not going to spin forever on, but just if you need a guy who can tunnel vision himself into the mid range and hit a shot, probably the best scorer in this draft, honestly, up there with the best scorers in this draft. He averaged 23 points per game, and I did write down assists per game on purpose because I think this is important. He averaged 1.4 assists per game, and that is no knock on him being a ball stopper, ball creator. He's a ball stopper. However, right now we are watched a team, the Atlanta Hawks, who had Lou Williams coming off the bench, and Lou Williams has been a perennial sixth man of the year and one of the best six man, if not the best six man of all time. If you're a guy, or if you're a team, that wants a guy like Cam Thomas, who at this point, spark plug, if you need him to make a shot, you need him to be, at best case scenario, be Lou Williams or Jason Terry or Jordan Clarkson. I don't see him being really, really good. I don't see him anything beyond that. If he obviously can develop as an overall better player, passer, playmaker, et cetera. The fact that he's on my list should be a miracle to how people so far can tell I do my draft prospecting. I just like his potential as a scorer, where if he's no worse or no better than a six man, great. He's going to be the best case scenario in this draft for that. And I mean, he's also not tiny either. A lot of people I feel like a lot of people think he's like small for the position. He's 6'4", right? He's going to be able to hit shots. He's going to be able to get open. At the end of the day, though, that tunnel vision is scary. Yeah. If you're a team in the mid lottery, you're not taking Cam Thomas. I think, and I mentioned this, I'll very briefly say this. I see the Lakers just taking a pick on him if he's available at 22, and that's all I have. I think they just go, what do we have to lose right now as a contender, hopefully? So Jordan Clarkson, Jason Terry, Lou Will. Any thoughts on Cam Thomas? You watched a lot of college basketball this year.
So I didn't see a lot of LSU outside of the NCAA tournament, so I really didn't have that many thoughts about Cam Thomas. I think that weirdly his ability to score in the mid-range might drop his draft stock because people don't look for that at all anymore. They should.
He'll be able to develop. I think he'll be able to shoot the three.
It's that mid-range shot is what you see over and over again the best players use to dominate games down the stretch. Those being recently, you look at your Kawhi Leonard, your Kevin Durant. Looking back, your Kobe Bryant, your Michael Jordans. All with incredible mid-range scoring games. And I think it's often an overlooked trait. Not comparing any of those guys. I'm talking about the importance of the mid-range scoring ability.
All right. Number 4.
So my last international prospect, I promise. We're going to talk about Usman Garuba.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is going to be schooling for me because I have not watched a single tape of him.
I think he should be selected in the late first round. I'm not calling for him to be selected anywhere else. I think he's a late first round pick. But for a late first round pick, I like him a lot. From a defensive perspective, he's incredible. He's probably one of the more polished defensive players in the draft. He's definitely a piece to look at for a contending team to plug right in to their offense. But I think, honestly, more of this is just me ceding to, once again, kind of the background and accolades he's had up to this point. For people who don't know, Usman Garuba played this past year professionally for Real Madrid Basketball Club. It is related to Real Madrid Football Club. In Europe, a lot of the sporting clubs field multiple professional teams of different sports with the same name. Usman Garuba starts for Real Madrid, who won the EuroLeague a couple of years ago. So to be clear, this is one of the most dominant teams in Europe. He set the record this season for the youngest player ever to start for Real Madrid Basketball Club, breaking the record of Luka Doncic. Is formerly the youngest player to ever start for the Real Madrid Basketball Club, and then became the youngest double-double in the Spanish league, breaking the record formerly held by Luka Doncic in the Real Madrid Basketball Club. I don't think Usman Garuba is as good as Luka Doncic, nor does he have the traits. I do believe in trusting the scouts in Europe who picked him up to put him on the best EuroLeague club because they think he's one of the best players in the continent.
So in terms of defensive potential, I haven't watched a single tape on him. So this is clearly just I understand that he's one of the best defenders, and obviously that's valuable. All I have for a word of him right now is probably valuable, just based on your elevator pitch to me. My question would be to you is what is his offensive comparison? Do you have the player that I can like visualize? Like who am I not seeing? I haven't watched him. Like I said, I'm going to watch him before Thursday, but am I
His
missing something
offensive
there?
game, frankly, is kind of, I don't want to say non-existent, but there isn't a lot there. This is why he's a later first round guy. Uh, he'll probably be able to clean some shots up, but for the most part, he's not an offensive kind of player. He is a defensive first, defensive focused player, which is not popular in
Kind
the
of your
NBA.
Torrey Craig, right? No,
What?
Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig is the first came to my mind. I mean, not like perennial defender, but Torrey Craig's a defender first and an offensive player second.
Yeah, I can't really think of a lot of players who are the size of Garuba at 6'8" that are a defensive first focused. A lot of the guys I think of defensive first focused, your Capellas are bigs. So it's another weird comparison. I don't really have comparisons for Giddy or Garuba. I think they bring very unorthodox skill sets to the NBA that we don't see a lot of. They don't fit any archetype. And I think they'll be interesting going forward.
I'm excited to, as Josh and I haven't said yet, but we'll be watching the draft together and my, I guess we'll call it green room. But I am looking forward to seeing his draft comparisons live by some of the analysts. I won't spend forever on my last two guys because quite frankly, there's a drop off on mine. But Charles Bassey is, I think, a guy that a lot of people forget about. And I say that because in 2018, he was the 6th overall player in high school. He was one of those guys that, like a Josh Christopher and like a Greg Brown, was highly touted. Guys that almost made my list, Greg Brown and Josh Christopher. We're talking about guys that are really, going to go late. I see Bassey going as late as like kind of how Vernon Carey did a little bit for your Hornets, like kind of fall into that 40th pick realm. But I also see him going as high as like 18. And I say that because it's scary, because if you talk about like defensive potential, like defensive first guys, like he's a Capella type comparison. I didn't even have that as a comparison, but that's actually a good one that you say that. Mitchell Robinson, obviously coincidentally going to Western Kentucky. But regardless, undeveloped Bam Adebayo, and probably best case scenario, if I'm being honest with myself, Richaun Holmes. None of those guys are bad, obviously, but I think a lot of people forget like how well he played in college. Averages 17 points per game, 11 and a half rebounds, 75% from the free throw line, by the way, at almost 200 attempts. That's really good for a big man. And averaged 3.1 blocks per game. So up and down season, has a little bit of injury risk, but I do think if he can develop post game, he'll be a lot better than where he's going to go. But I think if you're just looking at rim running, shot blocking big man, if you're in the late first, early second, he's a guy you need to look at. I think he's a really good player. All right, and your fifth and final guy before we get to the our one late sleeper. I guess like one true. I had like a one true guy I left off my 5 favorite list. And then also we threw this in at the beginning before this episode was recorded, is that we wanted to both see if we agreed or see who we thought of a guy that we're not that high on in the lottery. So Joshua, your 5th favorite player.
So I'm going to be what may seem like a little biased here, but I do believe in this guy. He'll go early second round, but he's someone that can work for a team right now, and that's Day'Ron Sharpe from North Carolina. Day'Ron Sharpe is hard to describe because he's incredibly athletic and he's huge. He's 6'11", 260 pounds. He can at this point, like in his size, bully a lot of the big men that he'll be facing in the NBA. He's that big. He has a motor higher than any of the college basketball players that I've seen in a long time. A guy who's going to bounce straight off his feet over and over again to grab offensive rebounds and crash the glass. We're talking, if you remember, do you remember how insane Zion Williamson's motor was at Duke grabbing offensive boards? It's like he would just almost float in midair.
100%. The motor thing gets thrown around a lot, and I can't figure out how to place it on some guys, but you're correct. I think he has
the first thing that there are 2 things I think of when I see Day'Ron Sharpe. One is size because he's an absolute unit, and two is motor because he works hard every second he's on the court. And the guy's going to go for the second, third, fourth jump every time down, grabbing rebound after rebound. He's a phenomenal defender, and he can finish at the basket. Reason he's not going to go high, can't shoot outside of 10 feet at all. His jump shot's broken. He probably won't have one. The word is he's been working on it in practices, and I know teams will be able to work on that with him. But it's not his skill set. He's your old school big man who's going to bring an effort that every team should want, frankly. And he's a real bruiser down low. There's not going to be a lot of guys bigger than him. When he's 6'11", 260, he's not going to face a ton of guys that can push him around in the NBA, which I think that matters for a 19-year-old player entering the league.
One of the biggest guys in this draft in terms of physicality. My last guy is Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes is a guy that I think a lot of people, again, similar to Bassey's situation, forget about. He's 21 now because of having a season at Kansas and 2 seasons previously at Houston. The same Houston team that we both were. You were higher on him. I'm not gonna lie. You were high on Houston, and Quentin Grimes was the reason they got there. Yeah, that was one of the best Houston teams, if not, like you mentioned, the best since that '83 team. In terms of being a team, 17 points per game in college, 5.5 rebounds. He's a rebounding style guard at 6'4", 205. Just big guy. 78% from the free throw line, 40% from three at Houston specifically. I took out his Kansas year because it was not 40% if you include his Kansas year. But no, he's got to improve as a playmaker for a guy that's going to be averaging, that kind of rebound and that kind of point style number for his play style. I don't love him. Like I said, there's a reason in no particular order, yes, but like there's a reason he's 5th on my list. I think he's a guy that's probably going to just, be a guy that we forget about in 3 years. But he could also be a guy that's a better shooting Eric Bledsoe. Steve Francis, not necessarily in terms of potential how he could be as good as Steve Francis, but I think the play style's there for rebounding and for the way they play. Josh Hart, and then a slightly worse defending Danny Green. I like the Danny Green comparison because if you watch their tape and you were to play them over each other, Grimes moves and acts like Danny Green, but isn't as good of a defender as Danny Green. But he's a hustle guy, and I really like him. Josh, any thoughts since we completely disagreed? 5 for 5.
Well, I think that's the great thing looking at the draft. We're looking at a draft pool of over 100 players, and they're great guys. And so we're all going to nail on different players that we like.
Can you give me, since we're going on down to the late round sleeper, can you give me one guy that your list was kind of deprived of late round sleepers? Not derived of late round sleepers, but do you have one guy that like isn't necessarily you don't love, but you think is going to either slip and be really good, or any guy that I know we talked about this, but is there one that you have?
I think, and it's honestly one of the ones on the list. The one's probably Şengün.
Okay.
He's gonna fall out of the lottery. He's gonna be seen as late round because I think he gets picked in those later teens, even to the 20s. I don't know who's gonna pick him, but I think he's gonna be a star.
Josh, we miss trivia. I know, right? We miss it for a couple of reasons. We miss it because it's our best segment. We also miss it because it's always where we get the most laughs. And I feel like I'm going to fill the trivia void here with our late round sleeper. And you're not going to believe me. I promise. You're going to ask me, am I serious, right? My late round sleeper is Day'Ron Sharpe. This is not a joke. I promise.
Oh, so we agree on something.
We do. I looked at it from a different perspective. You did your 5 guys as I did 5 favorite guys I think can be good. It was weird how we differentiated our list, but it was still 5 guys we really like. Sharpe, I looked at truly as a late round sleeper. I think he's a guy that will fall. But I also now, after talking and reading and looking into some things, you mentioned his jumper. According to Chad Ford right now, he is shooting, quote, the cover off the ball in workouts. Now, we all have our hot days, right? We've all made a couple threes at the park. I get it. But this is NBA draft workouts. He has the potential there.
I get that.
But his jumper's bad.
Not to take away from your point, but I've seen Ben Simmons workout tapes of just great 3-point shooting for him. And
that's not the reason I like him, to be clear. I just think that's intriguing that Chad Ford on his tier list pod was quoted as saying from every team he's talked to this worked out for him, multiple teams. I think it was 10 plus that his jumper looked awesome. The same guy that also shot 50% from the free throw line in Carolina.
Who doesn't?
But everything I'm reading, his draft stock is rising. Like, I think in that, if the Clippers are there at 25 and they're like, we need a guy like Zubac that's could be better. I think Sharp's a really good potential guy. When I say late round, I mean late late first round. I think he could go to 25 at the Clippers. He could also go as low as like 40 or 50.
Yeah.
A couple of reasons, though, specifically, is I do like that his, we didn't get to see his true offensive potential because of just the Roy Williams system, but just how he was able to play. He's a guy that's good and a guy that has a lot of potential and a guy that can rebound, but I'm having trouble getting past the fact that I think his potential is somewhere in that like higher upside Jared Sullinger is what I was trying to say. I like the Jared Sullinger comparison. He's obviously bigger, right? That's where I kind of lose myself there. He's bigger, but play style wise, Jared Sullinger played like he was 6'11", 265. So Jared Sullinger was, by the way, for the listeners who might not remember him, he was 6'8.5" if he was lucky on a good day in shoes, and he was like 270. So Jared Sullinger was a big guy. Wendell Carter can shoot from outside of like 8 feet. And then, I mean, God forbid, Clint Capella, right? So in terms of just if you want him to be a guy like Clint Capella, he could be that. I like how he works super hard. I didn't write motor like you did, but I had him as the super hard worker guy in the draft that he's going to come in. I think he's really good. I love that he learned from a great coach in Roy Williams, and I just love that we're ending this draft segment before we get into the Olympics with what I think would have been the funniest part of the episode if it was trivia, but we agree on Day'Ron Sharp. I still can't believe that. I think that's when you said it, I had to hold back everything in me to like not laugh.
He's awesome, man.
I have to ask you before we let you destroy Team USA, is who is a guy in the lottery you're not that high on that a lot of people are high on?
Jalen Johnson.
Any others? Or is it just that's Jalen Johnson and everyone else for that answer?
Yeah, I hadn't really Jalen Johnson's really the only one that stuck out to me. I kind of also pointed I'm not convinced with Franz Wagner.
Bingo.
Maybe I just am not seeing what Sacramento's seeing or what somebody else is. I'm not really convinced there.
The reason I ask again is because I think that was your actual answer deep down. I had Franz Wagner as well, so we won't obviously divulge this. That was my guy that I'm just not high on whatsoever. I don't think he's a defensive potential player like a lot of people think he is. I think his shooting is a little bit under par for what he could be like a Kispert level. Obviously, it's hard to be on Kispert's level there as a prospect, but it's hard to say that Wagner is going to be a great player for me. And Johnson, the reason I say it's not like, oh, it's Johnson and everyone else is because he might not even go in the lottery anyway. He might fall. So
yeah, I definitely say of the players that as I was starting to see mock drafts when I kept seeing Franz Wagner in the top 10, I was definitely a little confused. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I've missed on a lot of these before, so.
All right, Josh, very quickly, I guess, since we've spent, not quickly, but I guess whatever here. Team USA has completely and utterly fallen apart like we thought that could have happened on the main stage, and they lost to France.
I wouldn't say they've completely and utterly fallen apart. They put in a truly poor performance. I think I was vocal ahead of time in saying that I was not happy that the first game was going to be against France. France being the team that knocked Team USA out of the last international tournament, the FIBA World Cup. They were obviously a matchup problem for us because they're a remarkable defensive team. I'm not just talking about Gobert up and down the lineup. Evan Fournier was turning people's heads, like especially Damian Lillard, based on his comments after the game, saying these guys are different when they play for their international teams. Fournier finishing with 28 points. Game high on both teams within that game to lead France to the victory. Team USA couldn't shoot. They had an opportunity to win the game and had 3 straight open 3-point attempts from Zach LaVine, Kevin Durant, and Drew Holiday. All 3 rimmed out. Kevin Durant just looked like he lost what he was doing out there. He got into very early foul trouble. I think he got 3 fouls early in the second quarter. Went out, got a 4th foul early in the third, and FIBA rules 5 fouls like college's foul out. So he didn't play again until then late into the fourth quarter, would eventually foul himself out of the game in garbage time when they were trying to try to get back off of fouling. The team didn't look prepared to score. They didn't look bad on defense. Bam Adebayo looked like he had a good game. He was a good big man. Even the lineup didn't look bad, but these elite scorers we see in the NBA just weren't there.
So to be clear to listeners, this is actually us getting up at 8 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday to watch this. So this isn't like highlight watching back. This was us texting each other back and forth. Unfortunately, sadly, watching that happen. This is the same team that you mentioned, like the shooting struggles with the last 3 shots there. Not only was it the last 3 shots, but with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left in the game, it was 74 to whatever France had. And then the game ended with US had 74 and France had whatever they had to win the game. So, or 76, 83. Yeah. So the United States did not score a basket for the last almost 3 minutes. That's no disrespect to the United States. It's just, that's not the style of ball that they were prepared to have to play, in terms of a lot of these guys don't sound happy to play the Greg Popovich offense. However, France, like you mentioned, France is probably the worst case scenario matchup other than maybe Slovenia. After seeing what Luka did today, almost looking like Michael Jordan in the Olympics. By the way, he had 48 tonight.
Yeah. Luka Doncic looks like the best player in the Olympics basketball-wise. Probably true. I mean, he feels very comfortable in this rule set and the style. Scoring 48. France may be the best team, as in like fit together as a team. France had some guys that aren't in the NBA who clearly after this game should be in the NBA.
They had a couple former NBA players as well too.
Yeah, I mean, like looking at the former Gershon Yabusele and Nando DeColo, probably should find a spot on an NBA roster. I'll even say if there's a shortage of big men, I don't know how Mustafa Fall, who came off the bench for France, who's 6'11", like 270, and hit Draymond Green with a spin move that had Draymond looking for him on the other side of the stadium, isn't on an NBA roster. But he looked like he had the skill, and he's in his late 20s. Skills and physicality, should be playing for somebody. But France is very cohesive. They're obviously, like after defeating the United States, they just have to win one more game to make it to the quarterfinals and are going to be a massive threat. There's a reason that they took 3rd place in the last World Championships.
So I'll end with this for me, is this team, and that's no disrespect to Greg Popovich, but Mike Krzyzewski had a stranglehold on the United States basketball team, as well as like the Duke level, like, from his Army background and all that stuff. But he had a level of control over the USA basketball team where like that run from 08 to 12 to 16, like they were the best team by far, unbeatable, like whatever, right? Mm-hmm. That's no disrespect to Greg Popovich. No player on that floor, minus maybe Damian Lillard, strikes me as a guy that's going to be a leader in this situation. No, that's sorry to KD and other guys, but I just don't feel like coming into this, a lot of this guys, it's a scenario where I'm seeing that, a lot of guys were either hurt and can't play, and then, guys didn't want to do it and guys were covering it, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. This is the United States of America. And this is probably the best assimilation of talent. It's an all-star team, quite frankly, and it's not playing like a team. And that's, I think, the issue. Evan Fournier said it best. They're better individually, quote, but they can't be beaten as a team, end quote. But they can be, beaten as a team. Yeah, I'm glad I was going to end with Gershon Yabusele love. Thank you for giving him some love, because he made KD look silly a couple times, just being the defender that he is. Unfortunately, he was like the 13th man on the Boston Celtics about 2 years ago, and just not the same type of guy in the NBA. But nonetheless, that France team was fun to watch. Sad to see the United States lose that way.
Some other points. Drew Holiday was the best player out there for the USA. To put it in perspective, the game was close in the fourth quarter. If it wasn't for Drew Holiday, the game would not have been close in the fourth quarter. Drew Holiday had, I think, 17 fourth quarter points for the United States. It was either 15 or 17 fourth quarter points in those last 10 minutes, most of which were scored in the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. Drew Holiday and his championship form really was able to push the United States back to the brink and give them a chance. I'm starting to wonder if the best possibility for this team to salvage the Olympics may be to honestly lean into Holiday, Middleton, and Booker, looking at the guys who have not had time off that are in championship form right now, and lean on those guys to try to carry this team. More than that, even Holiday and Middleton, from what I could tell, did not play a ton of minutes together, and that to me doesn't make a lot of sense for two of the only players on this team that would have incredible chemistry together. Feel like they should be playing together coming off the bench.
Pop heard chemistry and was like, "Oh, Keon Johnson and JaVale McGee, yeah, God, come on, guys, get in."
Keldon Johnson, but
sorry. See, that shows you how
I think that JaVale McGee, honestly, well, against a team like France, should have gotten more playing time, where we were having a serious problem with not having a big man to compare to. Our big man was Bam Adebayo at 6'9". We barely played JaVale McGee. Rudy Gobert is 7 feet tall. Mustafa Fall was 6'11". We did not have a big that was matching that size they had.
Big or not, we couldn't hit shots. I think that's ultimately what might kill them against Iran. The United States plays Iran on Wednesday, and then France faces the Czech Republic on Wednesday.
One thing needs to be kept in perspective for people who think the U.S. is falling apart. The United States will make the quarterfinals. They're going to defeat Iran. They're going to defeat the Czech Republic. I don't know a player who plays for Iran. I know you can't name one that plays for Iran. There are no current or former NBA players that play for the Iranian national team. There's one NBA player that plays for the Czech team. In a second, I'll let you guess, see if you even know who that is. But there's even if they played the way they played against France, playing the way they did against France is enough to beat Iran and the Czech Republic. They would have to get worse. Stop looking up who it is that plays for the Czechs. They would have to play substantially worse than they did. And I think with a rested Holiday, Middleton, and Booker, who got off a plane the night before and then played this game, they will look better in those games. Now, once they reach the quarterfinals and we're really getting down to the nitty gritty, these are the good European teams. When the Spains and the Frances and the Slovenias, probably now with Luka Doncic, are there, then it's going to get potentially ugly for the United States.
At this point, it's as a United States citizen, it's gold or bust. I don't care how it has to happen. I don't want them to make the quarterfinals. So I think they're falling apart, and I'll find out if I'm wrong on Wednesday. They'll definitely beat Iran. If they don't beat Iran by more than 30, I'll definitely hit the panic button next week. Actually, just kidding. We won't actually. It'll probably. I don't even know. Next Wednesday, we'll have a lot of Olympic stuff to figure out.
Oh, you can hit it now. Like panic button's been hit. They lost the first Olympic Games in 2004.
Oh yeah.
And go back. Who from the Czech Republic plays in the NBA?
I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't.
So you should know, because there's an NBA headline. The player hit a game-winning shot over Canada in qualifying. Tomas Satoransky.
Oh, yeah.
Leader of the Czech Republic team.
Gotcha. Wow.
Only NBA current or former NBA player playing for the Czech Republic, I believe.
Yeah, France will take care
only
of
current, at least. I don't know about former. French team loaded with former NBA players and current as well.
All right. Well, what a fun, extra long episode because the draft is the draft. And, of course, we wouldn't probably be talking about it or as long about the Olympics if they didn't lose. But we are. And, look, we hope that they can get this done. Final thoughts on my end. Just want to, again, make the recognition for the Sportanarium Network or Radio Network for having us. We appreciate the partnership, and we look forward to working with them in the future. This first episode will be streamed on their live up until it runs out of time. Funny or lucky for them, it's our longest episode ever, so that's awesome. Josh, any thoughts, anything? We do actually need to preview how next week's going to work, because next week's going to get weird for the Two Pointers podcast when it's recorded and when it's posted. Before you say anything, I will just say it before I forget. We are going to be recording on Wednesday. I believe it is August 4th. So there's going to be a little bit of a gap here. It's almost a vacation in the Two Pointers podcast world. Unfortunately, that means that the vacation falls in the middle of the draft and free agency. I leave for a vacation on Friday morning. So I will be tuned in as much as I possibly can be to be prepared for our recording on Wednesday, the 4th, I believe it is, or whatever that Wednesday is. We can't even preview at this point. It'll be over by the time we try to preview it. So I'm looking forward to free agency. It's going to be fun. Josh, anything else before we wrap up?
I look forward to seeing how different all of these teams look. next time that we're on this podcast because they're all going to look really different.
8 days is going to feel, or 9 days is going to feel like 900. It's going to be crazy.
How this episode was long.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Close us out, Josh.
This has been the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Josh.
I'm Trevor.
And we will see you soon.